Hey there. Today I'm going to talk about a recent 32 player event I went to and the mindset and goals I had for the event that ensured that I was able to enjoy the day regardless of the outcome of my games. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. First things first, I want to give the event itself a solid shout out for a great event. Everwinter was a really cool 3-day con up in the Boston area. MCP had a solid turnout with 32 players for the main event on Saturday, but it also had some crazy and creative side events for Friday and Sunday. Friday was a charity event where for each dollar donated, you got a poker chip, which could then be spent on various number of cheats and shenanigans from rolling extra dice, rerolls, mismeasured ranges, reusable tactic cards, and plenty more. If you want to steal some ideas for your own event, I'll have a link to the Google Doc down in the description of the video. Then on Sunday, while there was the top cut going on, there was also some crazy So You Think You Can Dev open play. This is a format that allowed players to submit their own custom takes on 4 characters that aren't in the game yet, that were then chosen to be playable for Sunday. And while these characters weren't what one might necessarily call balanced, they were a lot of fun to play with. This year we had custom characters for Penny Parker's SPDR robot, Phantom X, Black Knight, and a new leader for the Defenders with Jessica Jones. Credit goes to Nick Patry for all the designs except for Black Knight, which was done by Andrew Hayes. If you want to take a look at those, I'll also have a link to them down in the description as well. Saturday's event was the standard affair. I played one of my Avengers lists. And on that note, let's talk about the goals I set, the expectations and challenges, and how all of those are kind of different in my head. Because really, all of these things could be interpreted in similar ways. So let's break it down. To me, goals are a very broad thing, but basically to me, it's tied to anything not related to the gameplay elements. Really, more so, the goals I have in mind are more focused on attitude or emotions. And what that looks like for different people is going to be different, because what people are wanting and expecting out of an event are going to differ quite a bit. My goal for this event was to focus on enjoying the cool moments in the game for my opponent. It's already pretty easy to be excited when your characters are popping off or do something cool, but it's harder to be able to cheer on your opponent's success sometimes. It's something I personally struggle with because it's very easy to, again, get excited about your own stuff, but not the other players. So I ended up being somewhat successful in this task by cheering on an opponent's comeback turn after I had beat them up. They had a really good swing back, and I was able to cheer them on with that. However, I wasn't necessarily enthused when my Loki got one shot round 1 by an attack in a different game. So for me, still room to be happy for my opponent's successes in a game. Some other examples of goals I have known others to specifically mention to me are things like not getting upset over dice rolls, to not let tilt or being upset affect how you approach playing the game, and the list goes on. Expectation is much more directly tied to the games being played. For me, expectation is directly attached to my record. My typical expectation going into an event is to go 500, which is to split my wins and losses equally. So at a 4-round event, I would want to go 2-2 at least. I know I'm a decent enough player, and while I'm not typically wielding the most optimized list possible, I tend to bring things that are synergistic enough to pull out some wins. Then finally, the challenge. This could be used in any number of ways. For a newer player, maybe the challenge would be to use all of your team tactic cards because they can easily be forgotten if you're new and trying to learn the game still. For me, last weekend, the challenge was to play Loki every single game. Another good one for a multi-round event is to try to use every single character you have in your roster over the course of that event. So these challenges really are meant to make a better player of oneself. Sure, they also provide a fun, challenge, and can be something that you talk about and all those things, but really probably not the best to set one if you're trying to really win a large tournament. But by having a challenge to use your tactic cards, it builds a little bit more of that muscle memory to look at your cards and make sure you're utilizing them. If you force yourself to use a character every single game, like I did with Loki, you begin better understanding what you can expect from the character, how they interact with different teams and on different scenarios, stuff like that. that. And if you force yourself to use every character in your roster, you can maybe identify a character who you never really ended up wanting to use and maybe swap them out for a different tech piece. Now, granted, at the end of the day, for my own challenge with Loki, I'm already pretty familiar with how Loki plays, so this was also just a chance for me to remind people that Loki is a fun piece. Fun for me to play, and maybe for my opponents to be reminded of how annoying he is. And before I get into the Loki shenanigans part of the video, I just want to also say, when you're setting these goals, expectations, and challenges, be realistic or be ready to put the work in to make them realistic. Going to one of the large upcoming cons like Las Vegas Open or Adepticon and expecting to make top 8 with a list you maybe have 10 games in with just isn't the most likely thing to have happen. With that said, I want to share a few Loki shenanigans that you can try and use. Disclaimer, I will only ever heavily advocate for Mind Gem Loki to be used with Discount Steve or leaderships that can feed him power to fuel what he needs. With that said, here are 3 plays that can catch your opponent off guard that Loki executes very nicely. First is Loki's safe midline extraction. There have been a lot of focus on characters who are able to safely get a midline extract off of the midline and away from attacking characters. Beta Ray Bill, Eyes on the Prize, some of the Inhumans Eyes on the Prize plays, and the list goes on and on. Well, Mind Gem Loki can pick up a midline and still have 2 power left over to use for Trickster if he gets targeted for an attack. So even outside of, I guess, really just some like combos to get a long-range attacker up the board, the Trickster will get him to safety. Even a medium move on a small base with a range 5 attack like Rocket or Hawkeye can't hit him after he Tricksters away. Next up is one of the reasons I really enjoy playing Loki with the Avengers specifically. Loki, especially as a 5 threat, is squishy. Sure, he can pay to count blanks on defense, which is nice, but even under Steve, it can become very taxing, and when he is low on power, well, Loki is a 5 threat model with 5 health, 3 physical, and energy defense. All of this to say, the ability to Trickster into bodyguard range of Steve or into Rage for a clutch heroes for higher play is great for keeping the Trickster alive. The final piece of tech I'm going to share is even something I actually got to pull off against the player who ended up winning Everwinter. Shout out to Art or Zero Cool for a fantastic game. He ended up winning, but I think at least I made him sweat a little bit. So for a bit of rules background, the abilities of Trickster on Loki, Can't Catch Me on Quicksilver, Lifesaver on Gwen, and tactic cards like Escort to Safety and Eyes on the Prize are really powerful abilities in general. They can mess with your opponent's action economy and can really mess up their entire game plan if you catch your opponent off guard with it. An additional layer to this is abilities that require an upfront cost to make their attack better, like a team tactic card or superpower can be really costly because technically an attack was made, or at least was started to be made, even if it didn't finish. So let's say Valkyrie uses Warrior of Legend and then charges a character and they use one of these abilities to get out of range. Valkyrie still gets an action back, but she cannot use charge again, and while she can use Warrior of Legend again, her next attack doesn't get the automatic converting to hits based on the number of crits and wilds you roll, because the power was spent, an attack was made, or attempted to be made, and so that goes away. So this is even like doubly effective for once per game tactic cards, whether those are attacks or buffing abilities. Things like Helios Laser, Ricochet Blast, Mental Domination, very good. So in general, players know to avoid using these kinds of things near the Trickster characters in the game. All of this is a lot of setup to say, combine this with Sacrifice, and you can really flip the script on a game. This combo isn't really helpful for just a normal attack or a spender because they'll get the action back and they didn't have to spend power by the time the Trickster resolves. But when those additional resources are put into an attack, the ability to just cancel that out is something else. In my game against Art, Cosmic Ghost Rider was using a spender with the help of No Matter the Cost to try and obliterate my Captain America. Thankfully, I had Loki nearby who was able to take the Sacrifice and Trickster out of range, which left Cosmic Ghost Rider with 3 damage on him and down a team tactic card with 2 actions. And most importantly, no giant Mystic Spirit bomb coming at Cap. So there are a cool few pieces of Loki tech you can employ against your friends if you want them to, maybe not though, if you want them to stay friends. It's Loki stuff. Now for the last giveaway of the year, sponsored by Tritex, we have Half and Half's comment about the new timeline events. And at the end of the day, if you don't have the pieces for something like timeline, honestly, I would just say don't worry about it. It doesn't seem to be something that I would expect to see with any regularity across the board. But I will be reaching out to get you hooked up with a regular MCP expansion of your choice. Here at the end of the video, I want to give a shout out to the guild sponsors. If you're in the UK, you can shop at Tritex and use the code TritexGGCP5 at checkout for an extra 5% off. And if you use that on a pre-order item like the new X-Men or the Warriors Fall Pack, it'll end up saving you 25% off in total, which is very nice. And also, if you want to enter into any future Tritex giveaways, all you need to do is leave a comment in the video that month that video was released in, and that will enter you into the giveaway. If you're in the US, though, you can head to gamechefs.org and use the code GamersGuild, no spaces, to save an extra 15% off of their already discounted prices as well, which comes out to a really good bargain on your end. However, I will continue to say, if you are shopping from your own LGS, just keep supporting them. We all understand and appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. Happy holidays, and until next year, keep on gaming.